The question is, what is mental health? My interpretation in very basic form is mental health is thoughts that kind of impact on your functional ability day to day. So if you think of conditions like depression, anxiety, eating disorders, learning disabilities, they all impact on your day-to-day living. So from that, we can then integrate the horses to help rebuild a new program of positive thoughts within a person to help kind of inspire them to be able to do the things that they wish to do during that day. So under the mental category, the main thing that we kind of use as a tool here is teaching them horsemanship skills. And horsemanship skills is basically how to be around a horse safely in kind of using more the natural side of things. It's not completely like natural, but it's using more the horse's language than is human's language. So horsemanship, definitely as you go along the path, you decide that it's not just coming down and being with horses, it's more a way of life. And the further you go into it, the more your life kind of stems from it, in a sense, because your habits are built around the horses, and you find the more effective it is around the horses, the way you act around people becomes more effective. So for people with kind of who are functioning lower during the day, we can teach them the skills with the horses that they then recognise and see the importance of those skills. So if you've got an individual where self-care isn't their top priority in life, but it's important for us to do, so we could come down and we could show them like how we look after the horses, how some horses you have to bath their tails regularly because they don't lift them out and it's full of poo and it gets very smelly. You can teach them self-care about how to make their bed. And also for individuals with eating disorder, you can show them how important it is for a horse to have its nutrition, to have its daily feed, what happens when the horse doesn't have its feed, how they lose a lot of weight and things like that. And then by seeing it happen in a real life situation, and to something that by then hopefully they will have built a relationship and a rapport with, they'll think, this isn't that useful, and they'll start to see the effects and consequences of having that happen. So from that, when they're carrying out the activities, the great thing about the horse is people get instant feedback. You're either doing it right or you're wrong. You're either getting the outcome you wish or you're not getting the outcome you wish. And it's not said with any judgment, with any opinion, like, you got that wrong again. It's just, I'm still not moving. And that's it. And the person like, well, they're not moving. And then you start saying, well, ask them to move them, just like, well, I did. And from that, a real nice conversation, because they're starting to explore what it's like to just ask a question, and if you don't get the answer you like kind of want, start to think, well, why am I not getting that answer? And then they start to think, well, how can I present it differently? And from that conversation, they may, when usually they interact with humans, they say, I want this now. And humans kind of shut down on that and say, hang on, this isn't how you speak to me. They see that with the horse, and then they start going to the person, please may I have. And they start to choose different language, different words, interacting with humans, because the horse is showing them that actually the way they're presenting their questions isn't effective. They're not kind of getting the outcome they want. So horses are absolutely fantastic at picking up your thoughts. Basically, as you get more and more along the lines of horsemanship and you refine your skills more and more, you start to realise that when you think a thought, so if you think walk on, something in your body changes, and it's so subtle that not all humans can see, but the horse can see, and the horse then moves on. So then you start to recognise how powerful your thoughts are, and how important it is to make sure that when you're asking your questions, you're very clear in your mind what you're wanting from that. So then you start to think, like, instead of just saying, oh, I'll do this now, I'll do that now, well, maybe not later, and things like that. You start thinking, right, at this point in time, I'm going to do this. And your language becomes a lot clearer, a lot preciser, and your decision-making skills become more efficient. Because with a horse, you can't kind of ask them to walk on, and if they don't walk on, just drop everything, walk away and say, well, it didn't work. Because you've got a live animal just standing there. So they have to kind of take responsibility for their decisions, and then they kind of get some consequences. So if they did do that, then the horse ran off and they may injure themselves, and said, well, that's what happens when you give up halfway through. That's what happens when you don't persist. And they start saying, there may be something more to this, and they don't want to see their friends get hurt. So they start saying, okay, well, I'll try again at least. And so from that, they get more empowered, more feeling of, okay, I may not be getting it correct, but I'm not afraid to try again. Which is where a lot of people, they try once and then they think, actually, do you know what, I'll give up. So that's part of horsemanship. And then another part is building a person's communication. And the more I do it, the more I recognise that a lot of people speak in this world, but not very many people communicate. I've got one favourite activity that I love to do down in the field, and it's where people come along and I blindfold them. They have hold of the horse, and then their partner has to then direct them through a load of obstacles. So they have to weave in and out of cones, shoot balls through hoops and things like that. And the person, and some people end up the other side of the field. Some people are there going, it's that way, and then the other person's saying, well, I can't see, where are you pointing? And people start to recognise actually how important it is, if you're giving instructions, to give them very clear. So then they start saying, okay, I need you to take 3 steps forward and then 3 steps to the right, and you'll move around the first cone. And the person starts saying, okay, this is better. Instead of just saying, well, it's over here, and then you do a bit of this, and it's just, the conversation becomes a lot smoother, a lot fluider. Also, people begin to listen a lot more. Not only listening to other people, but they start to listen to themselves a lot more. They start to recognise their own importance, and they're able to kind of hear the conversation that they're having in their head, because we've always got this chatter in our head. Everybody, like, you do something, I'm stupid at that, I'm doing this. And it's kind of starting to change that conversation in your head by having the successes with the horses, because you start to listen to the horse and you realise actually the horse is listening to me. And then you start noticing subtle changes in the horses, and the listening skills become more improved, because the communication is less about babble and more about what needs to be said. So from that, it leads nicely on to body language. And from body language, 90% of what we say isn't through our mouth. So when I'm here speaking to you, most of you are hearing the words, but then there's also the rest of me that's talking. As you notice, I talk very much with my hands. I let my hands move while I'm talking. So from that, they're having their own conversation. And the way I'm stood, if I was sat down here in a quiet little corner, you'd probably be like, I don't think she knows what she's talking about. But if you stood up here, people think, oh, she's talking to me. So your body language is very important, and not many people recognise what their body is doing. They're so focused on what they're saying, they forget about the rest of it. So when you're working with horses, they really pick up on your body language, because they don't speak English. So the words are completely out the window. So all you have is your body to talk to them. So then you start thinking, when I go down to the field and I'm in a real grumpy mood, how come no horses come near me? And it's because of your body language. You're walking down and you're marching down to the field, like this, had such a rubbish day and all this stuff, and the horses are going, yeah, you're really annoyed today, I think I'll stay away from you. Where if you've got a little girl coming along, they're skipping along and just flaying things, their bags everywhere, and the horse comes trotting up and says, good morning, how are you today? And that shows because the person's body language was a lot more inviting, a lot more accepting. So it's about becoming more attuned, more aware of what your body is actually doing. So then when you have the conversations, your words are becoming clearer, but also your body language is becoming clearer, so you become a lot more effective at getting across what you want to say. relationships. That's the next big one. There's more and more people that are having more and more problems with relationships, either when they were growing up with their parents, either with their partner now. They're an everyday part of our life. Like, I'm stood here with you guys. I'm building a relationship with you guys. So it's very important to understand what it takes to build a successful relationship. And it's not something you get taught at school. If this was a class at school, who knows what the world would look like, basically. Because when you've got a child or an adolescent who's had a bit of a rocky start in life, and they're wanting that feeling of security, that feeling of unconditional love, and they're finding it really hard to make that connection with the human, because the human at the beginning of their life has betrayed them in a sense. So the horse comes in and it provides that bridge for a person to get used to what it would be like to have a friend, to have that kind of, I would say, I won't say person, as we can change the horse into a person for a second, in your life, who they can come down and they can just share their troubles to, who they can just build new memories with. Like, I've got people who come here and they're always trying to sneak bread back in their cars with them. And because they've built such a nice relationship with them, like the friendship they've always dreamed of. And that's what they look forward to coming down and spending time with their friends. So once they start to realise what it takes for that friendship to blossom through better horsemanship skills, through better communication, and we'll go on to their identity and self-approval in a minute, they start to realise, actually, if I bring those same qualities across to other relationships in my life, then actually maybe they might be more successful and may get the friendship or the kind of family that they've dreamed of. So they learn how to bring about that successful feeling with the horse, and know that the horse will always be there if their new friendship doesn't work out, which gives them a kind of sense of security, and that makes them a bit more courageous to go out and try and make friends at school and things like that. Also, they learn how to deal with contrast. I like to call it contrast rather than arguments, because arguments mean that there's a right and there's a wrong, and also in my head, arguments means there's a lot of shouting, a lot of so scrap that. We have contrast here. So when people have contrast, there's a lot of emotions that fly around, and it's learning about how to deal with that contrast and not become too emotional about it. And also, as soon as the emotions start bubbling up, to then start seeking a solution. Because most people they would come down, they'd have a big argument, and then they'd walk away and you wouldn't see them for an hour. And then you start to think, well, that's not successful, that will not help you later on in life. So as soon as they start that anger building up, you have to say, hang on, you're starting to struggle with something, and they're like, yes I am. What do you want? I want this. Okay, well I want this. Right. There is some similarities here, let's work on them. And it dissolves the anger, and they start moving forwards again before it's escalated out of control. So that's kind of a good mediating skill that they learn. Also, co-creating. That's the next big one. They learn how, when you're on your own, you can be very successful in life. But then also when you've got your friends around you, you may be able to achieve more things. So it's about seeing the benefits of having more people in your life, and how having more of those good relationships can really enhance your life. And through having the horse there, it shows that that relationship there gives them the strength, the courage to go out and do things that they may not have done in the first place. So I've had people come down and they built up their identity, their self-worth, self-approval, and they've gone for the job they've always dreamed of. And then they feel really fulfilled for doing that, because they found the parts of them that they really enjoy. So that leads nicely onto a person's identity. If you think about back over today, were you more positive or were you more negative towards yourself? What was the conversation like in your head? And if you had that conversation with somebody else, so if you said the things that you said to yourself, do you think that person would still be stood by the side of you? Do you think you would have got hit? Depending how extreme that conversation got in your head. So we're very good at the first person we do is we blame ourselves. The first person we tell off is ourselves. But not many people can then praise themselves. Not many people will say, actually, do you know what? I did a good job at that. And that's the conversation that we need to start building up. So that's by building this positive identity. And it's not about getting too big for your boots and all this ego stuff. It's not the same conversation. This conversation is about just feeling good about what you're doing. And being able to say, do you know what? I'm an alright person, and I'm good company at times, and I'm a really good listener, and all these good points that people are they're very slow to kind of be able to share with other people, but they're very quick to say everything they can't do. So it's about getting them more confident in being able to share those good traits. So that's about building the personality. Is anybody able to share with me and describe their personality? Apart from Mr. Gaffney. We all know he can share his very well. See, it's something we don't think about. We don't think about what kind of person we are. Like, when you go to a social situation, like, who is you? Who are you taking to the party? And we think we don't recognise, but so it's about starting to build up and think, actually, when I go to a social situation, I'm confident. Do you know what? I'm good at getting the party going. I'm good at dancing. Just all those different traits, and then you start to recognise, well, I best start going to these social situations, and things just start to kind of spread. And you start to recognise what you believe and what you value. Now, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking. So a lot of us have this big belief system, and it may not be the most beneficial belief system we have. It may limit you in some ways, or it may enhance you in other ways. I don't know. I have my own belief system, you have yours. So what we have to do is, if your belief system is kind of hindering you from the life that you always dreamed of, we need to give you a new thought to think. And bringing the horse in gives you that comfort to explore. I wonder, what if I started thinking this thought for a while? I wonder how my life would change if I was happy with the way I look. Things like that. And by you just keep kind of recognising it, getting that feeling, getting that memory with the horse, the belief system starts to change. So if you have somebody who has real low self-esteem and self-worth, being in a crowded room would be their worst nightmare, but it's something they're very capable of doing. You start to introduce them with one horse. Oh, what's it like with one horse? Well, I feel pretty comfortable here. How about two? No, too much. So we go back again, and we have this conversation about what it's like to interact with different people, what you bring to that conversation. So that's kind of building someone's identity, and their self-approval and self-worth. I don't know if you've heard, but most lottery winners in their first 6 months lose most of their lottery winnings because their self-worth is lower than what they want. So if I said, I can write you a cheque today for £1 million, would you be able to keep it, or would you donate it all to charity? Now, not that that's a bad thing, but can you see yourself being worth £1 million? Because that's kind of putting the value, that's how much you value yourself. And most people's value is very low. And it's for no other reason than they keep thinking thoughts that just hinder them. Because they don't practice the thoughts that think, actually, do you know what, I've got this to provide people that would be worth £1 million. And it's about having that conversation with people about their self-worth and their self-approval, and giving them memories to take away where they were successful, where they were worth something. And their memories they can then take on to other life experiences and say, do you know what, I'll give this activity a try because I think I'll do all right at it. I was successful at learning this new skill, at how to get a horse cantering around me on a long rope. I think I'll be able to handle going and buying something in the shop. So it starts to bring new confidence to them. And from that, the most important thing that I believe, they can then start to love themselves. Because the conversations I have with a lot of people, you ask them, could you stand in the mirror, look yourself in the eye and say, I love you? Could you love yourself that much? And a lot of people would say, the thought of it, you can already see them cringing and moving back if to say, don't even go there. But that's what you need, because your opinion of yourself needs to be higher than everybody else's. Because that's the opinion that matters the most. So that's kind of working on the self-approval, self-worth. And a session would look like, depending on the weather, we would go down, for individuals with learning disabilities, it's great at giving them a chance to learn new skills and being successful at learning. I have a few people that come down, and the fact that they can go in and halter a horse is just incredible. And taking away that they have actually, they have the ability to learn something new, they're more able to go back and say, do you know what, I'm going to start learning how to read. I'll start reading that book I've always wanted to read and things like that. So we go in, we halter up the horse, we either go into the round pen, or I've got a load of obstacles out in the field, and we'll have the horse on a long line, and we jump logs, we get them to go around posts, we do basic groundwork exercises, so how to gain a horse's respect, how to be around horses safely, different things like that. And just the whole interaction, the learning, and also horsemanship skills is a hot topic all over the world. So they're able to relate with a lot of, I don't like using this term, but able-bodied people. Like they could go to school and they could say to their friends, say, guess what I was doing this weekend? I was horse riding, or I did this with my horse, and things like that. And the other kids and friends can say, do you know what, I've always wanted to be able to do that, but the horses are very scary animals, they're very big and powerful. And they say, well, do you know what, I did that. You should have seen what I was doing while they were on the end of a lunchtime. And things like that. So they have something that kind of makes them feel confident in that situation. Another fun one I love to do is imaginary scenarios. So for children who have had to take on a lot of responsibility very early on in life, we're able to create these imaginary scenarios. I love the one personally where we're out on a big ranch and we're in the wilderness and we have to build ourselves a nice campfire, we have to tie up the horse, we have to bring the hay net, we have to find the wood and things like that, and just kind of stimulates imagination. It makes everybody feel like a kid again. And then their imagination is the key for them to creating the life they wish. Because they start to then think, actually, do you know what, it's okay to dream, it's okay to think about those things. It may never come true, but it feels good thinking about them. And it's about creating that space for them to then say, do you know what, today, I'm going to imagine me and my horse are going to the moon. And it might sound crazy, but then they have an hour of great fun trying to get to the moon. And even if they just feel good for an hour, they've at least got that memory to take away, and they can lie in bed that night and say, yeah, me and my horse, we went to the moon. And it's really nice. So that's the mental side of the thing.